everyone. Welcome back. I'm so glad you're here. This week, we are doing weight loss, going deeper, and we're talking about what should I eat. And this week, we're going to talk about the big one, fat. Now, if you haven't been here, and this is where you're starting out, you're going to want to go back to the beginning and probably more to the beginning of the whole series as opposed to just this one. But if you want to go back to the beginning, we talked about what should I eat from a making a plan perspective, from a carbohydrate perspective. We talked about protein last week, and this week we're going to talk about fat. Now, let me tell you, fat, I grew up in the 80s. That tells you how old I am. And fat was the villain of all villains. Everything that was in the grocery stores was low fat this, no fat that, anti-fat everywhere. So if you ate fat, the whole thought was you eat fat, you're going to be fat. Don't eat fat. And, it's so interesting looking back because it was so easy to believe that that was real and that was true. And yet, I was looking at a video. I don't even remember what it was, but it went back to showing a clip from Soul Train. Anybody? Okay, I hope some of y'all are as old as me and remember Soul Train. But these people they were jamming on Soul Train and they were coming down the Soul Train line. And I was shocked because these people were so thin. Now, I'm sure this one was probably in the 70s, but again, look at us now. And we all went through that whole period of anti-fat, it's going to make you fat. And look at what we did instead. We ate so much. We went through the convenience food era. We went through everything packaged, everything microwavable. We don't cook. We only have a kitchen because it came with the house. Carbs everywhere, everything with added sugar. We didn't even know. See, we didn't know they were processing these foods and into the foods to make it taste better because they took all the fat out. They added more salt, added more sugar. And now look at where we are. So we can't believe everything that we hear. Fat is actually not the enemy. Now, if you've grown up in the era that I did, it can be a little hard to swallow. There's also the issue of good fat, bad fat. And how do you sort that out? So let's break this down a little bit. We're going to have plant sources first. Let's talk about plant sources of fat. There's a couple of good ones, and you're going to be familiar. Nuts and seeds. High fat. Now don't forget, all these foods have something else in them. In your nuts, you're going to get some protein. In your nuts, you're going to get some carbs. Depending on which nut you choose. You choose something like macadamia nuts, it's going to be primarily fat. You choose something like cashews, you're going to get more carbs. They're sweeter, right? So you're going to have to sort that out and not overdo any of it. But nuts and seeds, sesame seeds, things like that. And then avocados. Now, I had a conversation with a patient the other day. We were talking about food and I said something about avocados. She said, I hate avocados. And it just broke my heart because I love avocados. There is nothing like cutting open a perfect avocado and you just know it's buttery and it's got no brown spots and it's just gorgeous and you're like, oh, I love avocados. And my kids love avocados and they're killing me. It's so expensive to buy all these avocados, but so be it. Okay, I hope you're not an avocado hater, but if you are, okay, skip that one. Here's some other things. Be careful if you're doing the plant-based thing and you're trying to do, and this is a trap that I'm very easy to fall into, is some of the processed fats. So what do I mean by processed fats? The things that are based in oil. Now, I'm not talking about the oil you eat that's in the food as it is, like olives. Now, I don't eat olives mainly because they just taste too salty to me, but olives have obviously olive oil in them. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about processed fat in a bottle or a jar or whatever. So be careful if you're using a lot of things like the highly processed oils like canola oil, um, or the coconut oil that has really no coconut flavor in it because it's refined. If it says refined on on the container, that's not a good idea. Now, there are arguments in the plant-based community about oil. I think if you don't do any fat, any oil at all whatsoever, I think you can lose weight, and a lot of people do. It is obviously very high calorie if you eat oils, per quantity. So there's the jury is out. I will tell you, if you're trying to be fat adapted, which I'm going to get into in the next series, you're going to have to eat fat. You are. It's very hard to, especially initially, to move into plant-based eating, cut out all of the processed foods, all of the animal foods, and all of the fat at once. Most people are not going to be able to do that on a dime. You may get there if that's the way you want to go, but I would not start there. I would cook your vegetables in oil. I would use a cold pressed, high quality olive oil. I would use unrefined organic coconut oil, everything organic as much as possible because of all of the chemicals that can be added if that designation is not there. And really, it makes your veggies taste fantastic. But be careful because they do have things like vegan butter out there and vegan mayo, and you can overdo those. And those are generally processed oils that those are based in. So, if you want to do it here and there, okay, not a problem. But as a staple, I'd watch it. I'd watch that. Now, of course, other sources of fat, dairy. So if you're going to do dairy, I would say, and you're cutting down on your carbs, I would say do the full fat versions. I would definitely go organic. Okay. And the reason why is because your animals consume grass and, the hay and all that kind of stuff. And if they're being fed lots of chemicals and, their food is being sprayed with all those glyphosate and other kinds of pesticides, herbicides, things like that, then that's being stored heavily in their fat. And for cows that are producing the dairy, that's being also stored in the milk. And then you're getting it in a concentrated form. So, I don't do the animal foods anymore personally for multiple reasons. We can always have a whole separate video about that at some point. But if you're going to do dairy, go high quality, organic, the least processed as possible. Okay. Then, of course, if you're going to be doing meat, and like I said, if you're trying to shift yourself into more of a fat-based diet where you're eating some protein, more fat, less carbs, lots of veggies, but none of that processed stuff, no pastas and no potatoes, and unless you're plant-based and you're just eating a little bit. If you're going to eat the meats, go for the fatty ones. If you're going to eat chicken, get dark meat with the skin on it. Okay? Again, high quality, preferably organic, because like I said, chemicals are concentrated in our fat. We store them in our fat, so do the animals. So if you're going to eat it, you really want to get the best quality stuff you can. And that helps you, though, when you're eating the fat, to stay on that side of the spectrum of burning fat instead of staying on the carbohydrate burning side of things, which goes through much quicker, the crackers and the breads and the cookies and all that kind of stuff, the stuff you just fly through and then store the excess, and then you have more weight. So all that is to say, fat is not a bad thing. Fat helps keep you full longer. You can spread your meals out. You can eat less frequently. And that's going to be really, really important when we get into the video series about hormones, because your hormones are getting into all of this. How often you eat, how much you store food, when you burn it, all that kind of stuff. And if you are if you're doing what we call sugar burning, because you're eating lots of carbs, lots of processed foods, it's going to be really hard for you to switch your body into a fat burning mode. Okay? So that is the conversation about fat. We'll get into the hormones, like I said, in the next series. So subscribe if you haven't so you don't miss it. And I will see you for the next one. Okay? Give me some comments below if there's some questions you have, if there's something that I didn't cover that you want me to get to. Okay? All right. We're going to wrap it up next week, and I will see you then. Thanks for being here. Bye.